what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
When we think about aging, we often focus on genetics and medical conditions. Yet where we live, work, connect with others, and access health care may have an even greater impact on health and longevity. In this episode, we explore the social determinants of health and how they affect older adults and family caregivers. We'll discuss caregiver guilt, stress, community resources, and why your zip code may matter more than your genes. You'll also learn practical strategies to support your own well-being while helping aging parents live safely and well. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I used to think healthcare was all the same until I discovered PACE at Senior TLC. Now I can come to a place to stay active, see the doctor, or just enjoy a meal with my friends. Plus, having a team of people that help me make sense of my options gives me the support I need to stay in charge of my own health. It's been life-changing.
With PACE at Senior TLC, we offer a unique lineup of personalized care and a caring staff that feels like family, all under one roof. Call today and find out how you can experience a different kind of care.
Welcome. I'm your host, Karen Summey, with ACAP Community and a family caregiver. We're delighted you've joined us. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, a person who is 65 years of age or older today will typically live into their mid-80s, and many will reach age 90 or greater. However, the question is not simply how long we live, but how well we live. Research suggests that factors such as income, housing, transportation, access to health care, social support, and neighborhood conditions often have a greater impact on health and longevity than genetics alone. I'm joined today by Dr. Amandita Johnson, who holds a Doctor of Health Sciences degree from East Virginia Medical School in Old Dominion University. Today, Dr. Johnson owns a Care Patrol franchise in the Dallas, Texas area and is a chapter co-coordinator for ACAP Dallas-Collin counties. She held various positions in healthcare insurance and in administration for over 20 years. She's lived in 3 continents and was a military spouse in Europe and across Texas through her husband Kevin's several tours of duty. During their spare time, she and her husband are hands-on developing a cabin and RV retreat place near the rich mountains of Arkansas for seniors and active adults with ADA needs. They have 2 grown sons. Welcome, Dr. Johnson. We appreciate your being with us today.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, ACAP. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like to start our discussion today getting a big picture look at aging and caregiving. As our population ages, what trends are you seeing that will affect family caregivers over the next decade?
Yes, so to answer that question, I must bring up the older adults data and how long they live nowadays. So our older adults, 65, at least has 1 chronic condition, and 2 in 4 have 2 or more chronic conditions. So what that means is the seniors' health nowadays are more complex, with quite a few comorbidities, perhaps what they say when there's several chronic conditions that are not going to get better, or is manageable, but progressively is going to get worse. So that means that there will be multiple medications. There's several specialist visits that happen, perhaps ER visits, and more need for mobile medical services. People now may be living longer, but the quality of life is questionable. So what that means is with caregivers, they're having to coordinate more specialist visits, mobile services, longer span of caregiving happens. There's a feeling of helplessness that can happen, during that time and may lead to mental health issues. And so I'm going to show a slide here that summarizes both. The first slide has all these health implications that I mentioned the older adults are having to go through. So again, longevity does not always equal better quality of life. So there's all of these things that occur. On the next slide, as I mentioned, the caregiving implications are It really paints a whole lot of very different scenarios that are not quite pleasant for families to go through. So it's really important for caregivers to understand that this is the world that we are in now, and we must adjust. It is much different than caregiving was 20, 30 years ago.
Okay. You know, when we go to a medical visit today, and I've noticed this in the last several years, we're often asked a series of survey questions about our support systems. In other words, are we able to get healthy food? Do we have medical help? Good transportation? Do we feel safe in our home? What is the purpose for those questions?
Right. Those are social determinants of health questions. And more and more geriatricians and family practitioners now are really zoning in on how people live and how safe they are. Family caregivers should understand these social determinants of health and how they affect health outcomes. Access to healthy food is important. And on the flip side, junk food is not really good for the body. I mean, high sodium foods are inevitably going to cause harms on people's health. A person who has mobility issues while her bedroom is on the second floor may have to traverse stairs, right? And that's dangerous. It can lead to falls, and falls can be fatal. So this slide that I'm going to show have all the social determinants of health that you mentioned at the beginning of the show. They are social, education, healthcare system, economic, and physical environment. Our longevity is highly dependent on these things. They are those that happen outside of the doctor's office. And we have to think about the studies that have been done for decades about debunking basically that genes are contributing a lot to our longevity. Well, the fact is only 20% of the factors is related to genetics. Most of it is how we live, and these are the factors that affect how we live. In fact, it actually also affects when a person is young, how they lived towards what that means in their longevity.
I'm really surprised to hear about the 20% for the genes. I would have thought that it was more than that, but given that low percentage, so how can caregivers identify environmental factors that could be contributing to their poor health or quality of life for themselves or for their loved ones?
Right. So we think about the physical environment, for instance. We must assess how they live, right, at home. At least the caregivers must assess the older adults' environment. We need to evaluate if the floors are clear of tripping hazards. Are the lights bright enough for them to go around the house? Do the bathrooms have grab bars, and many others? Physically, there might be changes with the loved ones that somebody who is taking care of them should not avoid, and really look into, how often are they going to the bathroom, or are they even going to the bathroom for many hours a day? Because that can signal, it's either incontinence or dehydration, or diarrhea or upset stomach, whatever it is. So we have to really zone in on their daily routines. Bruises and marks on the body may signal falls that are occurring. And as far as their schedule, if they used to go to bingo every Tuesday and they stopped and become more withdrawn, perhaps it could be depression, or perhaps it could be dementia. Because oftentimes people with dementia may seem lost in an environment like that. They can't remember. Sometimes they can't even count well anymore. Change in emotional well-being could, like mood changes, could mean, are they weepier? Are they more sensitive than before? They're agitated at certain times during the day. And as far as like socially, if let's say the grandkids used to visit every Sunday afternoon, excuse me, and all of a sudden they don't want to see the grandkids anymore, or their friends used to come, all the time, and they refuse help. Those are changes that a caregiving spouse or child should really look into. As a caregiver, it can be harder to reflect about their own environment or well-being. Some of these changes can creep up within months or years. And high intensity caregiving, meaning 100 hours or more, and that's kind of the standard of what studies the scientific world would say is called high intensity caregiving. If it's 100 more hours a month, that's only three and a half hours a day. That seems like it's not a whole lot, but it actually can lead to adverse effects of the caregiver's health. The risk of onset of distress increases progressively with the amount of time spent in caregiving each week. And think about some of our caregivers are working 8, 10, 12 hours taking care of a loved one. And that can mean burnout can happen quicker than those who are stopping by for an hour or two a week.
Right. Well, I'm hearing a lot of areas of stress in all of that. So, how does chronic stress affect both caregivers and the aging parents? What are some signs that long-term stress is beginning to affect a caregiver's health?
Right. Thank you for asking that question. It's so important. For a caregiver, the physical or health changes may be hard to notice as the weeks and months pass. Skipping medical appointments or perhaps procrastinating to see the doctor is one of them. Self-care can happen or may not happen due to the perceived demands of, oh, I need to be there for my mom or dad all the time. There's a saying, the body expresses what the mind suppresses. So some of the signs could be recurring colds, hyperallergy attacks that signal decreased immune health. There may be heightened irritability, weight fluctuations as a caregiver may skip meals, constant anxiety that manifests as hypervigilance. That's why it can be a challenge for hands-on caregivers to go away for 2-3 days, go on vacations, because they become restless even when they're not there. And those are signs of chronic stress. And I want to show you on this slide. It's called the caregiving burden and impact elements. So you have psychological stress, physical health, disease biomarkers, social relationships, career, and at times it could be inadvertent elder neglect or abuse. So what this means is the caregiver will sometimes feel like they're stuck, or maybe oftentimes feel that they're stuck. They may be the brunt of the mood swings of the older adults, right? And a lot of lifting is not good for the body, especially if you're not trained on how to lift. And there are disease biomarkers. I mean, real things that happen that at the cellular level is quite apparent, right? I mean, nobody looks through your cells in a microscope, but there's been studies where constant stress, just like what the hands-on caregivers go through, kind of have diminishing returns for the body. So the studies show that dementia caregivers are at higher risk of heart attacks and have more problems with their immune system responses. It is also believed that stress hormones and metabolic markers, among other things, are high with caregivers. Basically, again, at the cellular level, our bodies go through changes that are unfavorable to our health when we are in prolonged stress, like long-term caregiving. It's good to be aware of these things because, as we know, that if we're more susceptible to serious infections, cancers, injury, or chronic disease, then we can find ways to combat them. And I mean, every day we're thinking about what are those things that we can do to prevent those.
Right. And, you know, as I look at this slide, the thing that strikes me is that people who are especially long-term caregivers may go through all of these things that are on the screen, every last one of them. And when you pile one on top of the other, that really is indicating a big issue and a challenge for people who know that they are absolutely needed and have to continue doing the things they're doing. As I've gone through things in my personal life, I found that I was lifting all the time or carrying things in and out of facilities that were needed, or just whatever the case may be. And I've seen some of these things in myself as I've gone through many years of caregiving myself. So these are big concerns for all of us. I want to explore for a moment a common concern that we hear all about at ACAP all the time, and that's caregiver guilt. We all probably have some preconceived notion about what it means to be a good son or a good daughter, but we may not have a very realistic view of what the expectations are or where they're really coming from. So my question is multifaceted. Let's start with where caregiving expectations come from.
Sure. Guilt does come from perceived unmet expectations, right? They're our reality. It can from within, or it can from external views. It could be around family or society. And I notice in my advisory practice that it can be cultural. It's either the community, how you were raised, so the family culture.
Right.
In some families, the eldest are expected to make the decisions, right? And I'm talking about children, caregivers. In some, daughters or women are expected to worry about all the details. Another culture may see responsibilities for care divided among several people in the family, regardless of gender or birth order. So family dynamics can play a role in that. And it, as far as how a child or caregiver feel about themselves, it can be hard on them, and it is hard on us just to feel guilty anyway. Here's an example of one of this comments of a caregiver on a study that I looked into. She said, "I visit my mother before going to my own home. I want her to stay with us, but neither she nor my husband wants this to happen. My mother says, I took care of you, but you do not want to take care of me. I can't keep up with a task. I become bad-tempered when I cannot meet my responsibilities. No one understands me. I have a bad feeling all the time." I mean, these are real things.
So when we're talking about caregiver guilt, why is caregiver guilt so prevalent, and what happens when that guilt is driving caregiving decisions?
Yes, first of all, watching your parents age evokes a feeling of guilt at a human level. We were used to them taking care of us, and they were youthful. They took care of their bodies, but when their bodies or minds fail, and we are still healthy, right? So physically, we see our parents. We just feel so like it's an unfair situation, right? Here I am, I'm living life, but mom and dad, they're going downhill. So it makes us feel helpless. We can't do anything about their aging, and guilt should be there, and we must embrace it, right? So our society puts quite a bit of negative talk about guilt, but if you're a human being, you should at some point during the day feel some type of guilt. And guilt or being conscientious, I think that might be more positive, right? Being conscientious about what you do and how you take care of your parents, that should be part of the decision making. That means we have a heart, we're moral. However, when guilt alone drives a caregiving decision, that doesn't mean we're making the most logical and fair decisions for ourselves or others. And most of the time when guilt strikes, we're putting that person first, instead of all the other factors or even ourselves. So then we skip meals, we skip medications, we don't go to our health visits because we feel guilty. Mom and dad, I often hear this, mom and dad only have a few more years to live. It's okay if I neglect myself. Well, it doesn't take for your health to go a different way, and you develop all these other diseases if you neglect yourself for even 3 months or even 3 weeks, right? So we have to keep taking care of ourselves. What I usually say to a client is be selfish sometimes. It's the right thing to do even if you're feeling guilty. You must nourish your body, your joy, your soul, so you can come back and be the best human being possible. Besides, when you burn out, it doesn't really benefit either your loved one or yourself.
Right. And I was making a few notes as you were talking about that, and I thought, guilt can drive decisions about many things, whether they're caregiving or not. And often when we're having those guilt-filled feelings, they may be coming from our own internal values, but they could also be coming from somewhere else, and somebody could be placing that guilt on us. That's not always the case, but sometimes that happens. But I thought about, not only does caregiver guilt sometimes affect health choices and skipping those appointments, rearranging our own lives because of our care recipients' needs and that sort of thing, but people make career choices in this way also because mom and dad needs me to come back to my hometown and look after them. There's no one else. We've got to do this. If we don't take time to really think those things through, they can have lasting ramifications for a lifetime. Those can be quite catastrophic if we don't do what we really feel we need to do, and we're letting guilt drive what it is that we're about to undertake. It can be very devastating to our own lives. So yes, be conscientious. Think about your parents. We want to think that we're good sons and daughters and spouses and the whole thing, but there are more ramifications to that than just that person or those people that you're thinking about. You have compared communities with longer life expectancy to those with shorter life expectancy. What makes a community, and describe that for us a little bit, what makes a community better or worse for healthy aging and longevity?
Well, I'm going to say this, and it's a pretty strong statement, but this did not come from me, right? It came from studies. A community or culture that encourages isolation does not live longer. When you study the longest living cultures, there is usually a village that supports others. So that's the constant. It's not the best gyms, it's not the high-end food and beautiful homes that support a longer life. Most of the longest living towns are poor, but they have a sense of community. The older adults have a reason to live. There's intergenerational living. Their faith practice is strong. And there's access to simple and nutritious food. Some of them eat the same meals for thousands of years. So, and then caregiving is shared among siblings and neighbors. So you literally could leave dad, right? Ask your neighbor, leave dad for 3 hours while you go and go to the market, an open market where you have access to good food, and people may even drop meals, right? Because they know you're struggling.
Aren't they wonderful?
That to me is the ideal village that really takes care of one another.
Mm-hmm. Great. Many caregivers focus entirely on their parents' health, and they often let their own health slide due to feelings of guilt or responsibility. Why should caregivers pay equal attention to their own health, and what are some realistic ways they can improve their health, even when they feel that they have very little time?
That's right. Before I answer that, it's important to do some self-reflection before one starts the caregiving journey. So now we are not made equally, right? So there are people who can be hands-on caregiver. Not everybody should be doing it. Not everybody really has the capability even to be patient with parents on a daily basis. So doing this self-assessment beforehand allows you as a caregiver to know your limits. Because if you take on something you either can't do by yourself or will have, that feeling of bitterness towards it, it doesn't really benefit anyone. Certainly doesn't benefit yourself. So knowing those boundaries is key. I say to the hands-on caregiver, do not give up what you love doing. If you go to bowling on Tuesday nights, do that. Find a way to get someone to watch your loved one, and and just be away for 2 to 3 hours. Even if you don't quite enjoy it the way you used to enjoy it, just keep on, because that's your lifeline. Like that, your friends, your life after the caregiving role is over. Those are important as well to your life. Same with, if you are used to going to church on Sundays or whatever day your faith calls you to go to church, or if you love gardening, don't just give those up, because caregiving is temporary. It's
Right.
also the responsibility of a healthcare professional, your doctors, your PAs, and nurse practitioners. When they see the caregiver, they should do a routine, questions as far as their mental health, the type of training they might need, the intensity of monitoring, and external support required to adequately care for the caregiver, should be there. So there's a study by Schultz that talks through all of these things and the model of what a clinician should be doing to take care of that. Because again, it takes a village, right? So we should, as public health professionals, as healthcare providers, we should be monitoring and really putting that in the strategy of the care to make sure that caregivers are taken care of.
Right. So if we set those boundaries up and we really think carefully about the caregiving process and what we can and cannot physically or emotionally handle, let's talk a little bit about how that self-care that we're setting up contributes to our own longevity.
Sure. So this goes back to the social determinants of health. After the caregiving journey is over, which often means the passing of a loved one, the person who identified as a caregiver and caregiver alone, and this is not hard to do after 3, 4, 5, 7 years of caregiving, they lose a major daily project, and they will tend to feel as if they're lost, or their lives are empty. What am I supposed to do now? So creating those boundaries are lifelines. It helps you go back to who you are and what you used to love. Because oftentimes we don't just change as human beings, right? We have a propensity to enjoy art or music or science, but whatever it is that you loved, you're able to go back to it because you didn't give it up. And I think that gives you hope and a reason to live, of course, right? The reason to live is a big factor in longevity. That alone will keep you going.
Right. Well, this is a tremendous amount of information to process. So let's break it down for our listeners and talk just a moment about 3 actions that caregivers could take this week that would positively affect their health and their well-being.
Yeah, they're pretty simple, but hard to do. The first one I would say is take time for the basic things. Get some sunshine, go outside, take some long breathing exercises, drink water, watch comedy shows, whatever it is that makes you smile or laugh, even for a few minutes, will do wonders. Second one is ask for help and join a community of caregivers. I often say, listen, you were not born with a cape, right? You're human, and there's no shame in asking for assistance. If you can afford to seek counseling, please do. There's no shame in that either. If not, talk to your friends, talk to your faith leader. They said that talking to your church friend is about the same effect as going to a counselor. Isn't that amazing? That's
Yes,
actually
it
well
is.
studied, and that's a new study that I learned. And the third one is reflect and thank yourself for your filial piety, your calling. So filial piety is basically how cultures, how you are taking care and upholding the dignity of a senior citizen within your family, within your society. It is called felicissimo. It's called utang na loob. We have these different cultures. It's all over the world. People are caring for their loved ones, and it's a noble act. You're not alone. You don't have to drown in it, though.
Right. That's an important point. So today you've talked about guilt and stress, health, community, and longevity. So for the caregiver who's listening and feels completely and utterly exhausted and worried that they're not doing enough, what would you like for them to know today?
It's okay. It's okay to feel guilty. It's okay to feel worried that you're not doing enough. No one will ever really be able to do enough because nobody's perfect. But thank goodness, you as a caregiver stepped up. You're doing your best. And if you ever feel like you'll need to delegate, you move a mom or dad or get help at home, congratulations. You didn't give up on them. You admitted you're human and you want to live too.
There you go. Well said. Well, the clock on the wall is saying that it's time to wrap things up for today. This has all been excellent information and something for caregivers to think about as they journey with their parents. Dr. Johnson, thank you so much for volunteering your time to ACAP and our audience today. We deeply appreciate it. And I want to thank you, our viewers and listeners as well. We hope today's conversation has given you some new insights about what it means to be a caregiver and how you can be mindful of your own aging experience and longevity in the process. If you found this episode helpful, please be sure to share it with a friend or fellow caregiver and visit acapcommunity.org on the web for more free programs, resources, and supports. We have new ACAP chapters opening up this summer and fall in communities from coast to coast. So please be sure to check those out on our website to see if there's a chapter near you. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to click the like button to let us know this episode was helpful. And if you'd like to hear more information from our broadcast, click the subscribe button as well. We also want to say thank you once again to Senior TLC in Newton, North Carolina for sponsoring our monthly podcasts available in both video and audio formats, and to Every Age, our sustaining partner. You can access the video version on our YouTube channel at ACAP Community and our audio version through the Mesh Caregiver Community on any platform where you listen to podcasts. You'll find links to both those sources on the homepage of our website at acapcommunity.org. Please join us again for our next episode. Until next time, remember, you don't have to navigate caregiving alone. Be well, and bye for now.